So today is part 1 of 2 of talking about evangelism and you. So you might be questioning, why are we doing this right now? Well, it is because, one, we have created a new outreach board, and part of that is, well, going out into the community and having them help and facilitate how we're going to do this, what we're going to do. But the bigger thing is that in the world around us, people need to know about Christ. But the one thing that I've come and seen as I've been a pastor is that we don't really talk much about evangelism in the Lutheran Church. It's usually been consigned to, well, not to say anything bad, but usually, oh, that's the board's job for evangelism, or that's the pastor's job, or that's someone's job. Because, let's be honest, evangelism is a very churchy word. We might know it. We might hear it as part of a Bible study or a sermon series. But evangelism and you is all about trying to demystify what this is. And to kind of get down to what can you do to, well, be in the kingdom of God and to do as God has commanded in that kingdom, which the whole thing is go and baptize, teach, obey in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. This is where we get the evangelism, teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. But we need to get some definitions right out the gate. So when you hear the word evangelism, where does your mind automatically go to? Knocking on doors. Hello, Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons. How are you? The megaphone on the street corner, or for me, it's the corner of Orchard and 30, where the busy intersection is. That's by my house. Every summer, we'll get a Baptist preacher with a megaphone. It's interesting to hear them sometimes. More often than not, what do? You ignore that. What else? When you hear the word evangelism. Like I said, it's a churchy word in many ways. I think some definitions will help us into understanding this. Evangelism comes from the Greek word euangelion. And all that means is a big word that just means good news. That's it. It's evangelism is just not even a verb, or it's just telling good news. Now, this good news could be from anything. If your army won a great victory, you would send a runner to the city that you were part of in the Greek world. And that Greek messenger would bring the euangelion, the good news that the army has won its battle. Evangelism is just, well, good news, the gospel. It's not so much of a doing of something, it's more of what is already being said and done. It is the good news of Jesus Christ. That has been established, that has been done, and that is not going to change. AKA, evangelism is not something that you do. Evangelism is just the good news already written down and proclaimed by Jesus Christ on the cross. It is not for you to do, it's already been done. It's just the good news. Then there's, of course, it's speaking of the things. So therefore, evangelism isn't about, knowing everything or knowing all this stuff. It's just sharing what's already been done, which is the story of Jesus. It's speaking the story of Jesus. It is speaking and understanding what that story is, but it's not actually you once again doing the good news. It's already established, it's already happened. This is just the story of Jesus Christ. When we think of evangelism, what we're actually thinking of is outreach. Evangelism is simply the good news, the story of Jesus Christ. What the church is meant to do is outreach, which is shining the light of Christ into the community around us. Outreach, if you're looking for the biblical terminology, is being salt and light in the community. Basically, to be Christians in the community, to have a Christian outlook and arm in the community of things going on. And it's that way so that we can do evangelism. Evangelism is not knocking on doors, going door to door. It is not the preacher on the preach corner. Evangelism is simply the good news, the story of Jesus Christ, in sharing that news. If you could think of where that primarily is done, where is evangelism done then in the world? Here at the church. So, by the way, is evangelism just for people who do not know Jesus Christ? No. Who is it for? Everyone, which includes you, as a believer, need to be evangelized. You, as a believer, need to hear the good news of Jesus each and every week. Where do you go and hear the good news of Jesus each and every week? The church. So if you really want to, and this is a different way, and maybe a different way that what we've seen in the past when we've talked about evangelism, especially within the Lutheran Church. Evangelism happens when we share the gospel of Jesus Christ. Where do we and that message is shared to both believers who need to hear it and unbelievers who need to hear it. That primarily is done in the church. Outreach, then, is more what we do. Outreach is simply having that salt and light. If everyone can read this, if you can't read this, that's fine. Turn to Matthew 5, 13 through 16 if you can't read it on there. But if someone could read that quotation from part of the Sermon on the Mount, what Christ is saying. And remember, Christ, when he's saying the Sermon on the Mount, he's speaking to his disciples. Basically, the people, they're not apostles yet. They're just simply learning about him. They're learning about God. They're sitting at the feet of Jesus and learning about what God wants from them and what he is doing. So can someone please read for us Matthew 5, 13 through 16. Go for it, Brian.
You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven.
So with these two definitions, has this challenged what evangelism is, or what you've heard evangelism is, all throughout your life as a Christian? If you're saying yes, that's both good and bad, by the way. Is this a helpful definition, do you think? Yes. We are called to, every person is called to be outreach. Every single person has the good news. Every single person is called to be salt and light. This is where, as my family is so often finds the funny things on the Facebook, it is okay for Christians to be salty and stay lit, as the kids would say. Yes. That's a mug. I want to get that on a mug so I can just drink that in front of people. It'd be great.
There's nothing in there about being a great orator.
No, there's not. One of the things that evangelism has been kind of... Actually, I want to hear from you. You all have been in the church longer probably than I have been alive. Remember, I'm only 34 years old, but maybe you've been in the church less time than I have. And maybe you have had experiences on different boards of what evangelism is in your childhood or here at King of Glory, or not saying those were bad things, but how have you usually done evangelism in your church life? Like, how did the church, either your church growing up or what you've heard the church overall doing, how have they done evangelism? How have you seen evangelism done in the church? Going out and knocking on doors. What else?
Our church has done a Sunday of service where instead of traditional Sunday worship, we just go into the neighborhoods and, hey, do you need your leaves raked? Do you need your bushes trimmed? Do you need this? Do you need that? We just do stuff for people.
Okay, cool. There's knocking on the doors. There's the just doing service for people who are in need. What else have you done or have you heard done in other churches? Like I said, just don't think of King of Glory. Think of the churches that you grew up in. Think of the churches that you were a part of before King of Glory.
Having activities on the church grounds.
Having church things on the church grounds and inviting people to it. How many of you are comfortable with knocking on doors? Okay, good. So we're all in that point. Surprisingly or not, I don't like doing and talking to people that way because what does that look like?
Like you're selling something.
Yeah, well, you're invading their space. They didn't invite you. Selling something. The idea around all of this, and where I'm thinking evangelism is just the saying the good news of Jesus Christ. Outreach, then, is shining that light, being different in the world around us. But that means there's something called an integrated life. So when you hear that word, an integrated life, I'm going to read this. One of those days, Jesus went out to a mountainside to pray. He spent the night praying to God. When morning came, he called his disciples to him. He chose 12 among them, who he also designated apostles. Simon, who was called Peter, his brother Andrew, James, John, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, the son of Alphaeus, Simon, who was called the Zealot, Judas, the son of James, and Judas Iscariot, who became a traitor. He went down with them, stood on a level place. A large crowd of his disciples was there, and a great number of people from all over Judea, from Jerusalem, from the coastal region, from Tyre, from Sidon. They all came to hear him, and he healed his diseases. Those troubled by impure spirits were cured, and the people all tried to touch him, because power was coming out from him in healing them all. If you look at this section of Luke, this is just a snapshot of a daily life of Jesus. You can see some things that he did. One of these days, so every other day, Jesus went up to a mountainside to pray, and he spent time in prayer with his Father. Then he called his disciples, and he designated him to be, okay, I've been talking with God, here's now your job. And then he went to a level place where everyone could be, where he could see people, and he started healing them. He started doing the things that, well, is the kingdom of God's work, which was reconciling and restoring the world and showing this by doing miracles, by healing. Why would this be called an integrated life? First of all, when you hear that word integrated, what does that mean? Yeah, it's meshed. Everything just connects together. What here is showing Christ's integrated life? What is he being integrated into? What is meshing with Jesus? Well, is it this healing that he's enmeshed with?
Part of his day is praying, being with his friends and family, and then going and being with people.
Yeah.
It's like that's his day.
Yeah, his day is he spends time with God, so he's in prayer. He spends time with his friends, his family, his apostles. And then he goes and he does the kingdom work, which is, in this case, healing the people. And it all stems from what? Being with them and integrating himself in them. But where does it start? It starts with God. It starts with prayer. An integrated life, and why this is important for outreach. Evangelism, yes, but outreach specifically is because we are being salt and light, integrating our lives with the life of God, with the life of our friends, and then the life of the world around us. There are three parts for an integrated life as a Christian. It is being integrated with God. It is being integrated in our families, in our networks, within our groups that we're comfortable with. And then it's being integrated within the greater community around us, those who we don't know. And here you have that with Jesus. You have Jesus with God, Jesus with his close friends, his family, and then Jesus with the community. Those are the three parts of an integrated life. What I like to call an integrated life triangle. This is copyright not from me, by the way. This is all copyright from other people. But I found this to be a helpful thing. You actually have it on the handout here. So when I talk about this, it's up with God, in with the church, and though it's cut off a little bit because of the screen, it's out with the community. So it's being up with God, in the church, and out in the community. This is the integrated life. Now, how many sides of the triangle do you see? 3. There are 6 sides. Thanks, John. 6 sides. No. But we have 3 sides of a triangle. And because, well, can you do all 3 of these consistently? Have you seen all these 3 things done consistently? Let's do a little bit of an experiment. Let's say you have an up relationship with God. That means you yourself, let's do this on an individual level. You are going to church. You are praying to him. You are being in a good relationship with God. That's the up relationship. And that means you're having really good relationships with the people in the church. You're going to Bible studies in the church. You're making friends within the church. All good things. But you're only doing those 2 things. So you're only being with God and being with your friends in the church. It'd be like if Jesus was just praying to God and being with his disciples only, and he didn't go out to the crowds and he healed. What would that look like in the world around us?
We'd be cloistered off from everyone, and no one else would hear the good news. They may think that we feel better.
Better than them. Exclusive. A better word that I found is maybe not exclusive, but insulated. Insulated. You know, like you have insulation in your homes? What is an insulation supposed to do for your homes? It's to keep the cold out and to keep the warmth in. In this way, you are having a church. Let's now go with this. Is an insulated life, do you want to be an insulated person? Meaning, you're not going to step out from your home. You're comfortable where you are. And it might be good. You might have everything that you need, but nothing changes.
There's a perception of safety for folks.
There's a perception of safety.
So, we sometimes gravitate to that.
We gravitate to this. And now experiences with the church. Let's go on the larger scale. If a church, is it good for the church to have an up relationship with God? Absolutely it is. That's kind of the whole point. Is it important for a church to have good relationships inside of the church? Absolutely it is. This is a great thing. But what happens if we just have that relationship, if we're just on that corner, what happens to our out? What does a church look like that is insulated? Exclusivity. It's stagnant. It's a country club. The idea behind this one is that such that it's hard. Because you're doing the good things, you're still being in God, you're still doing this stuff, and yet you might be doing evangelism within, sharing the good news, but your salt and light, your outreach, it's kind of wanting.
This model grows the church by having babies.
Yes, this one grows by having babies, bringing other people in there because you already are growing this. I would say, and this is not a dig on any one church, this is a common type of church in where you are scared of growth, where you are scared of the idea of complications, and it's a fear mindset. Because you're insulating because you don't want to get cold. You fear cold. So you insulate, you do these things. Well, it not always might be fear, and you might actually say, hey, it's good for us to keep those relationships with God and with each other. That's great. Yeah. Maybe the knocking on the door isn't such a great method because there's another method. Let's say knocking on the door is a great one to feel this way. Let's go in the opposite direction, on the opposite side. So your church and yourself, you really want to make sure that your relationship with God, you've got it. You're praying to God. You're doing your devotions. You're doing all of this stuff. It's great, and it's wonderful, and it's amazing. And you want to go out, so you knock on doors. You try to get people in. You're doing the mission. You're doing all this stuff. You're out in the community, but you yourself don't have really any connection with the church. You might go a couple of times, but you're so worried about getting people in the kingdom. You're so worried about making sure other people have a right relationship with God like you have, and you are so going out there that the main focus isn't about what's inside the church and making sure the church is good, to make sure the church is a good place. You're more worried about the community and their relationship with God. You're more worried about them because everyone else will be fine. They already know about Jesus. I'm really, really worried about the people who don't know about him. Because I have a great relationship with God. These people don't know him, and I got to go and make sure these people know about Jesus. What does that sound like? That sounds like the guy on the megaphone on the street corner. And what happens to a Christian who has a great relationship with God is constantly going out into the community and constantly going out and spreading the good news? What happens to that person? They're going to burn out. And they become isolated. I can worship God in my own way at home is a great how this looks in the world around us. This is, I'm spiritual, but not religious. It's the idea of a personal relationship with God, a personal thing that can go out and do things, and I'm talking with people, I'm doing all this stuff. But, my church attendance isn't that great. I really don't know the people in my own church. I don't really understand what the worship style is. And that's all secondary because I really got to make sure that the people out in the world know who Jesus is while I am ignoring the community of saints that are already in my midst. This would be as if Jesus went up, he prayed to God, he ignored his disciples, and just worked on the crowds on the hill, on the plain. What would happen to the disciples? They would leave. What does a church look like when this is going on? It's empty. Because, everyone's out in the community, right? But if there's nothing holding them here, if there's no in relationship with the church and its members, then that's a problem. Done. Exactly. Where do they go? They stand next to me with their own megaphone. They go, they're the ones who are joining me knocking on the doors. But what if you're a great church with all these great programs, you have great fellowship, and everyone in the church knows one another, and you have great outreach, and you're inviting people into the church, and you're getting the people to come. You're doing great stuff in your community, and you're growing the church, and it's big and it's huge. But the Bible itself is kind of lost. You make it more of a palatable experience. The gospel becomes a little bit more watered down, easier to understand, and more relevant to the things around us today. Where you have a great relationship between the people in your church, you have a great relationship with the people outside of the church, but your relationship to God is, that's secondary. Because it's really important that we're good in the church to make it look really nice for people and to do good things in the church, and really good to go out into the community to grab people to bring them into this great community. And God, he's somewhere in the middle of all of that. It's more social. You get a feel-good church. This is the one that's a very popular American model of church. It looks great to be here. You've got the best website. You've got the best programs. You have the best preschool, the best school, the best water slide in your, well, maybe not that one. And a coffee shop. The Holy Brew. This is called independent. Because this would be as if Jesus did not go to his God in prayer, did not start and be with his Father. He was just with his disciples. He was just with the crowds. He was independent from God. Each of these models, insulated, isolated, independent, have all been models that just think of the knocking on the doors, the programs. A lot of what we have done as evangelism can actually fall into one of these three categories. Whether that would be make it more looking good, make it more look like this, have the programs, go out there, go and do this. No, don't go out and do this. Just make sure that you're really good with God, you're really good with each other. Have more babies to make sure that you're continuing in this family stuff. No, make sure that you're still having a good relationship with God, but you got to really go out there. You've got to make sure that people know about Jesus. You really got to make sure the world knows about Jesus without having a place to go to. An integrated life is this: for by grace you have been saved through faith. This is not from yourselves, it is a gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. For we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God has already prepared in advance for us to do. The integrated life is being within the center of all of this, and relying on God for all of it. It's a gift from God. It means that there is going to have to be giving things up to God by being in the community, by being in the church and not ignoring one portion for another or thinking one is better than the other. It has to look like Jesus' life. Prayer with God, time with his disciples and his inner circle, his family, his church, and serving the people in the community in a way that is authentic to who God is. Before we go on, this is a lot of information. Like I said, there's a reason why we're going to split this up into 2 weeks, maybe even 3 if we have to continue on with this. This is big stuff. What are your thoughts so far? What's bubbling up? What thoughts are coming to mind when you're hearing these things, looking at these things, looking at this? It's a plan. A plan? What do you mean?
Well, there's more than one step to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, in order for it to come to completion, you need to complete all the steps.
Ah,
So you can't have your results with leaving one of the steps out.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it all starts with God. So if you leave that step out, the other 2 aren't going to really mean much of anything. But Matt?
To be able to do any of this for all of us, your heart has to be in the right place with God.
Yes.
You can't do it with
You can't do it with a hardened
hardened heart.
heart. You can't do it with a heart that is minded in itself. It has to be, once again, what does it say here? We are God's handiwork. We ourselves are created by God. We ourselves have been blessed by him and are given to him. So everything has to start with the heart of God. This is what it is. What else is bubbling up to the surface? Don?
For people who've been here a long time, I feel like as I see this triangle, that at times in our history, we've never been on the bottom. I think, but we've oscillated, or hey, we got to bring members in, let's go, focus. I think we've always done a good job at this church of focusing on God. But we have to focus on going out in the community and all that. Or we have to really focus on our church, ourselves and whatever. And what you're calling out is like, you can't just do one side of the triangle, you have to do it all.
You got to do it all. And guess what? That takes an integrated life. And where does that start with? Does it start as an organizational level? Starts with prayer, but where does it start first? In all honesty, could you make this model, give it to everyone here? Let's use us, for example, at King of Glory. If I was just to give this here and everyone, okay, we're just going to do all 3 of these things. Go. How would that work? Tom again.
Back to my comment about different times, different focus. Even different pastors have different strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the question about where does it start? It starts maybe with the pastor. It starts with the leaders of the church, and it starts with the culture. It just keeps growing as you add more people to it. But I think the vision from the pastors to the church leadership and people that are there every day.
Very good. It is important that, and to be honest with you, yeah, in the model that we have had in the church, and this is throughout the entirety of Western civilization, the model has been top down, where the pastor has the vision or the priest has the vision, the workers share that vision, and then they disseminate that information and it kind of trickles down. That does work, and it's important that as a pastor, I have a vision for the church. For instance, and I'll be out right here in saying this, my vision for this church is to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Meaning, we are comfortable with the God, we're comfortable with all that he says, but we're not afraid to stretch those muscles into the world around us and to share God's love with those people around us. Now, this is things like, well, how do you do that? How do you become comfortable with being uncomfortable? And part of that, my mission and what I want to see, does not come actually, surprisingly, and this might surprise you, Don, is that, yes, it's important for leaders to come from top down. But what is the danger of that model, of a top-down model? You don't have buy-in from the people? What else?
We'll be content to sit back and let you do all the work.
We can be content in letting the pastor or the leaders do all the work. That's why we have boards, right? That's why we have elected boards, to do this job for us. But what's also the other thing that is what is the unspoken thing, the uncomfortable thing? Because part of becoming with being comfortable is to speak truth into something. So let's speak truth into it. What happens when leadership changes? What happens? You lose the vision. I'm not saying that the top-down model is bad. By no means. You need to have a leader who has a vision, who shares that vision, who has a passion for that vision. But what happens if you put all of that on a top-down model? What happens when the leader goes? Back to square one. You have to do this all over again. What I'm envisioning is an integrated life does not begin with a leader. The leader has to first embody an integrated life. God, church, community. Up, in, and out. The leader has to embody an integrated life. The leadership has to embody an integrated life, but they are not the source of where that integrated life comes from. It's not top down, it's bottom up. Because what does that do? It provides a solid foundation. But you might be asking yourselves, what does that mean? It means that for each and every one of us, this integrated life comes into where each individual person in the congregation is having a relationship with Jesus and God, having a relationship with their church family, and with those who do not know Jesus. All three. Now, honestly, I have a question. Look at these, what I call the spheres of relational influence. What I mean by this is, how many of you know someone in your immediate family who does not believe in Jesus or does not have a church? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Almost everyone here. So then where is your mission field? There. So, this is the comfortable with being uncomfortable. This is, and I understand this, but this is why we have the relationships with God and with the church. What I mean by spheres of relational influence, you all know people in other places. You all have influence with people in your immediate family, meaning that you can talk to them about stuff that you can't talk to anyone else about. You have an influence with your neighbors. And these are just examples, but like school, within your hobbies, within your church, within your work, within your doctor's office. How many of you go to a restaurant and say hi to a waitress that you just know, or a person that you just see there? Yeah, that's an influence you have. Correct. Correct. And you're vocal about those things. What I'm talking about here is a very different way of outreach and evangelism. Remember, evangelism is just the good news, the story of Jesus Christ, and talking about it. Your influence begins not with programs, not with a huge thing of going out, but every single person in the congregation which includes, by the way, the pastor, the leaders, and everyone else living that integrated life in our spheres of influence. And what I mean by that is you are living a life that is up with God, in community with your fellow believers in Jesus, and having a relationship with those who are not in the church, but having a relationship with all of those places, all centered in Jesus Christ. You have influence in these spaces. What I mean by that also is, where do you think right now? Where do you see God already at work in your spaces? Where do you already see that within your own family? Where do you see God at work already? Because God is at work everywhere, but where do you see him already at work in these spaces, in these spheres around you? Jeff?
I would say you don't always see God's work.
Mm-hmm.
There are times where he makes him known by the questions that people ask. I mean, I always think back to my neighbor, man. It
Yeah.
took 20 years for him to start coming to church.
Absolutely.
You know, it was just, it's not so much that anything that I saw per se, but it was the things that he saw in, not just me, but my family.
Yeah. Guess what? That's a good point. 20 years. That's a long time for you and for me. How long is that for God? Like that. How long is that for a relationship? It's not that long, actually. I see this in my spheres around me this is where it is, in my hobby sphere. I play Dungeons and Dragons because I am a geek. I am a nerd. I like to roll magical dice and, not magical dice, I like to roll dice and do math. It's my one good thing I can do. Weird, I understand. I own that. But people know me as pastor in those spaces. I have relations with them. They've asked when I had a person, by the way, I was online with him a couple of years. A couple months ago, he calls me or texts me out of the blue wanting to know about my faith in Jesus. Because he had questions. He was a Jewish person. He was within the Jewish community. And he was having questions on this stuff. Why do you believe what you believe? It took me 5 years. And it all began because I used funny voices and I rolled rocks with numbers on them and did math. But there was influence that I had in that space. I wasn't necessarily preaching the gospel, but I was leading that integrated life. Here's how I'm with God, I'm in the Bible, I'm with my fellow people in the church, I'm being nourished in the scriptures, I'm being nourished in this stuff, I'm living out my life in the world in the ways that God is wanting me to live out, and guess what? 5 years later, something happened. I have no clue what he's going to do, but you know what? God is working there, but it's an integrated life. Where else can you see this?
Well, I have an example. The other day it was really cold, and the neighbor went out, took his garbage cans in, closed his garage door for like an hour.
Yeah.
Finally, I called him up and I said, just let you know, your door's open. It's pretty cold out. And he just said, thanks for looking out.
Something as simple as that. Congratulations, you've done outreach. I'm serious. What this looks like, and what I'm giving an example of, and what I'm trying to have us as a church and have the greater church understand, is nothing radical. It's just simple. It's living. But it does come from, it has to be in all three places. You have to have a relationship with God. You have to have a relationship with fellow brothers and sisters in Christ, that you go and that you meet around a table, that you have his body and his blood, and you already have relationships outside of the church. You don't have to go knocking on doors anymore. You can if you want to, We'll talk about that next time, about what that actually means, because you might be saying, great, I have these people in my life. How in the world am I supposed to approach Jesus? Because there does come a point where, guess what? You got to talk about Jesus. At some point, Jeff, did you talk to Pat about Jesus?
Actually, it was questions that he asked me.
But did you answer them? You talked to him about Jesus. Came a point 5 years later, I had questions from my friend, so I talked about Jesus. How do you get to that point? We'll talk about that next week, and what it means to be a person of peace in our relationships, aka doing the integrated life stuff. Well, thank you everyone for coming out. I'm going to get in here. Yes, Doris, real quick. Yes, the Matthew one. Yep. He was probably really tired afterward, by the way, too.
Yeah, but I mean, we always just read about the ones who were one-on-one.
Yeah.
But this was the whole crowd.
Yes. Whoever brought to them, whoever was that.
Maybe not everyone asked to be healed.
But everyone who did, like not everyone there, but everyone who was asked to be healed was healed. Yes. But and once again, that's the fun stuff. That's what we get to do. Might look different, though. All right. Oh, yeah, that's just the commentary. That's only 21 through 28. Yes. Gibbs is fantastic. I love him. He's very thorough.
Yeah, I would say.
That's one of 3 volumes. I got the other 2 in my office. They're not that big.